This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. We're always easy to talk about the things, and this is one of the things, honestly, I've learned through my 5-year career so far covering this team specifically, is that it's real easy to only talk about what could go right. But sometimes it's important to have the conversation of what we need to keep our eye on to make sure that things hit expectations, right? A lot of times when we talk about things that aren't positive, I'll say negative for the purpose of this conversation, but times when we talk about things that are negative, we do it with this cynical, dishonest view of things that completely turns people off. But what I want to do is look at this team that I feel very highly about, that I think will be very good this year, but also look at it with the perspective of, hey, these are the roadblocks that this team has to avoid in order to get to where they want to get to. It's not being negative for negative sake. I don't really even think it's being negative. I think this is more or less of, hey, let's look at all angles of this and let's look at what maybe we're not thinking about because we're thinking about best case scenario so much that could actually make an impact on the season. We see this happen every year. Obviously, injuries are something that happens every year, but this isn't about those things, right? The freak things that you can't plan for. These are about the things that you can plan for, and that so far through the offseason, I have some questions about, hey, is this going to be something down the line that will bite this team in the butt? Because we've seen that happen before. There were things we underestimated. Me personally underestimated how much time it was going to take Deshaun Watson to get back to normal. And also, I underestimated his inability to be normal after he joins an offense that just wasn't catered towards him. Like the impact that having to start Jacoby Brissett had for 11 weeks would have on Deshaun, because simply you're not installing an offense for Deshaun anymore if he's suspended for 11 games. But that being said, let's talk about some of the things that I think of that I worry about slowing this team down the line. The number one thing for me is kicker. Now, you guys know how I am about kicker, even though sometimes I think people run with a more cartoonish version of what I feel about kickers. And I get it. It's entertainment at the end of the day. But my issue with kickers is that, one, I think coaches over-rely on kickers, right? So coaches tend to think taking the points means kicking a 50-yard field goal or a 40-yard field goal. I do not think those should be counted as guarantees. I think sometimes you should account for the failure in those field goals, right? Cade York is somebody who can make a long field goal, but he's not very consistent. That's what worries me about Cade York. He has the raw ability to be a great kicker, but does he have the consistency to be what this team needs, right? And this is why I always say I'd rather have consistency than the raw ability from a kicker. Like, I don't care if my kicker is average. If they can make the 40-yard and below field goals, well, even that, like the 40 and below field goals where almost every kicker's in the 99 percentile, and the extra points where almost every kicker's in the 99 percentile, I don't need anything else. I think a lot of teams get caught in this trap of, we need a kicker who can make 50-yard field goals and 60-yard field goals. And that has been proven hard to find consistency in, right? Just get a kicker who's consistent. And that's my worry about Cade York. He's not consistent. And the field goals that kill you aren't the 55-yard misses, aren't the 60-yard. Those are cookies. The offense should not be in a situation where they're relying on a 55 and 65-yard field goal if they're doing their job correctly. Those are bailout kicks. I don't care if those kicks go through or not. In the context of a game, yes. But am I going to blame the game on a kicker because he didn't make a 55-plus yard field goal? Hell no. That's not his fault. He shouldn't have been in that position. The offense should have done more throughout the game. What I will blame a kicker for is missing a 40-yard field goal. What I will blame a kicker for is missing extra points. And that's been the problem with this team with kicker for like 3 years out of 4. Ironically enough, I think the guy we got before we drafted Cade York was the one that didn't miss that many extra points or 40-yard field goals. He just didn't have spectacular range. I was fine with that guy, whoever that guy was. I forget who he was, but that's good. I don't have to remember the kicker. That's good. That means you didn't. It was a 40. Like, I want 45-degree days if you watch The Wire from my kickers. I don't want it too hot, too cold, just right. 45-degree day. I ain't got nothing to say about a 45-degree kicker. That's all, right? But time and time again, we fall in love with the potential and the range of a kicker, and I just don't care. Just make 40-yard field goals and below in extra points. Because that's the stuff, when you miss that stuff, that kills everything. So you don't need a great kicker, but you need a consistent kicker. And I worry if Cade York is a consistent kicker. He has great range, no doubt about that. But is he consistent? Because if he's not consistent, that will cost you a game or two. And in the AFC, a game or two costs you the playoffs, costs you the division. Cade York's got to be consistent. And if there are signs that he's not consistent early on, I don't care what you spent on the draft before him. If it's signs in camp that he's not consistent from 40 and extra point, get rid of him. Because while it is hard to find somebody who can consistently make a 65-yard field goal, it is not that hard to find kickers who can make 40-yard field goals and extra points. There's like 18 of them every year. Find one. So that's one thing that I'm worried about. The second thing, and look, this could be the reason the Browns overachieve their expectations, and this could be a reason that the Browns underachieve expectations. They're betting on a lot of upside, right? We're betting on the upside of Deshaun Watson having more time. We're betting on the upside of David Njoku having a better quarterback. We're betting on the upside of Jordan Atkins. We're betting on the upside of Double O. We're betting on the upside of Elijah Moore. We're betting on the upside of Donovan Peoples-Jones. We're betting on the upside of JOK. We're betting on the upside of Perion Winfrey. We're betting on the upside of Grant Delpit. We're betting on the upside of a lot of players. Now, again, if more than half of those bets hit, we're going straight to Christmas. Winner, winner all the time. But if those bets don't hit, then we're going to be sitting here complaining and mad at Andrew Berry, as happy as we are with them now. We're betting on a lot of upside. It's important. Now, again, this doesn't mean you be automatically pessimistic about it. Like, betting on upside is not necessarily a bad thing, and I don't think these are crazy bets on upside, right? It's not like we're betting on like Anthony Schwartz's upside. We're betting on players who have showed legitimate promise to make some improvements in a better situation. That's what most teams do. But also, sometimes those bets don't work out. But that is what the Browns are doing. We're betting on upside. That can go great. That can go wrong. I wouldn't say it's 50-50, to be honest. I think it is like 75-25 that these bets work out. And that's why I'm confident the Browns are going to have a good year, because I think the odds are in their favor. But they are betting on upside. And there's always a chance when you're betting on upside that things go the opposite way. We'll see. The third thing to keep your eye on as the season progresses to make sure this team does not get caught in a roadblock is this is a new offense, essentially, with Deshaun Watson at the helm, building around him. And this is a new defense. No, we don't have different coaches on the offensive side, but there's a new sheriff in town on the offense, and his name is Deshaun Watson. Defensively, there are a bunch of new coaches. There is a new defensive system. And while defensive systems typically don't take that long to install, it's still new. So I anticipate that in camp, it's not going to look like what we want it to. People are going to be a little bit freaking out about that. But it is important to remember that these are new systems on both sides. And similar to how I underestimated that for Deshaun Watson, I don't want to underestimate that for this Cleveland Browns team coming into the season. That could be something that holds him up a little bit, right? Maybe Deshaun Watson's really familiar with what he's going to be asked to do, but that doesn't mean that Elijah Moore is going to be familiar from what he's being asked to do, or Amari Cooper, or the offensive line, or everybody else, right? So that is something to keep your eye on, is that there's a lot of new moving parts to what the Browns want to do. And similar to their upside bet, hey, if these changes work, nobody's complaining. We're going to be really, really good. If these changes don't work, we're going to be talking about, well, we did underestimate that it was a new offense, a new defense. We had a lot of new stuff going on. This is something to keep your eye on. This could be something that makes the gears in the machine not move as cleanly as you want to, because these gears are brand new. Again, they needed to be changed out, but this is the natural consequence of changing out all of those gears. All right, and the last roadblock to the Browns' success this year is keep your eye on this offensive line. Now, again, I'm not saying this is a likely bet to hit, but the offensive line did look a little shaky at the end of last year. Now, I think that had a lot to do with a lot of different factors. One, they were being put out there a lot because the defense stunk. Two, teams were able to load the box on them and got used to doing that because they were going to run the ball as much. And the Browns were really limited in how much they could pass the ball because there wasn't, again, they were putting a new quarterback in, especially in the second half of the system. But even before Deshaun Watson walked in, the offensive line was having its problems. And that was even with Ethan Posick back. This offensive line is not super young anymore. Ethan Posick is 27. Wyatt Teller's 27. Jack Conklin's got to be close to 30 or 29. Joe Bitonio's in his early 30s. And then Jed Wills is pretty young, but you would, like, as much as I think Jed Wills gets unwarranted criticism by some people online, I'm not going to act like Jed Wills isn't the worst offensive lineman on a very good offensive line. And that's a little bit of a concern with him being the left tackle. Like, I think people would be more at ease if if Jed Wills was like the third best offensive lineman on the team instead of like the fifth best. And look, he's still a starter for a lot of other teams, but clearly he's not like at the same level as Joe Bitonio or Wyatt Teller when he's playing well, or even Ethan Posick or even Jack Conklin. He's a step below those guys. So you worry about that. And also another reason to worry about the offensive line is Deshaun Watson is a different beast to block for. And that can be good and that can be bad. Deshaun Watson is not going to be as meticulous with his feet as Jacoby Brissett. He's not going to be as quick to get rid of the ball as Jacoby Brissett. He's going to take deeper drops than Jacoby Brissett, which means for the tackles, it's going to be a much more difficult job. Now, the question is asked here. And again, I'm not somebody who hates on Jed Wills, but Deshaun Watson and how he takes his drops in the pocket have been naturally more difficult for tackles to handle. You look at Laramie Tunsil's numbers, who's one of the best tackles in football. He even struggled to keep Deshaun Watson clean because Deshaun Watson holds the ball for a little bit, moves around a lot, and when he is in the pocket, he does take some big steps in that pocket. These are things that you don't want to overhaul with Deshaun because you don't want to mess him up mechanically. But these are things that exist. You have to build around this. The question here is, when I look at this Browns offensive line, I think the weakest part of this offensive line is easily both the tackle positions. Those are the most vulnerable parts of this offensive line. You got Jack Conklin and you have Jed Wills. Those are the two weak links in the offensive line. And I wouldn't say weak links like for most other offensive lines, but in the Browns one where you have I don't know if he's going to be a Hall of Fame guard, but you have an all-pro guard, two all-pro guards and a Pro Bowl center. it's clear that the tackles are the ones that can be taken advantage of the most. Not saying that like Jack Conklin isn't good, but he's been injured a lot, right? So he's vulnerable because of that. And Jed Wills is a little bit more vulnerable than the rest of these guys because we established he's on a lower tier than them. So if those are the two guys naturally that are going to be most vulnerable because of Deshaun Watson's play style, is the Browns' offensive line actually in position to be good this year? That's a serious question we got to ask. It's uncomfortable as hell, but like that's a serious ass question we have to ask because Deshaun Watson's not going to become a different quarterback. He's going to have his great plays. He's going to have his flaws, and there are flaws with every great quarterback that you have to build around. And the one flaw you have to build around, or one of the main flaws with Deshaun Watson you have to build around is, hey, the way he plays quarterback opens him up to more sacks. And are our tackles good enough? Do we have too many resources in the middle and not enough resources at the edges for the style of play that Deshaun Watson has? For other quarterbacks, having a strong interior was more important because they weren't as mobile. Jacoby Brissett, Baker Mayfield, they weren't as mobile as Deshaun Watson. So they were more apt to stay in that pocket and step up, especially Jacoby Brissett. So the arrangement of talent there was fine. The edges weren't as important as the interior for that play style. For Deshaun Watson, it flips. The edges are a little bit more important. And that's where we're weak. That's where I worry about this offensive line's ability to adjust. Now, Bill Callahan's one of the best around, and he's going to do what he can to fix that. But there's only so much you could do on paper to erase the fact that, hey, your two, I would say, least desirable offensive linemen are your edges, and that's going to be what's most important with Deshaun Watson. That could become an issue. As good as this offensive line is, the talent can be distributed in the wrong place. Now, again, it's not enough of an issue to panic about. It's not enough of an issue to just trade guys over. But it is definitely a concern. And I'm wondering, like, with the whole fifth-year option conversation with Jed Wills, do the Browns go with it or not? I think that's the more intriguing part. I don't think they really care about the cap hit, like people are saying. But I do think they want to see, hey, how does Jed Wills do when we have to rely on him a little bit more in his blocking versus when he wasn't relied on as much as a left tackle, because a lot of what the Browns wanted to do was in the interior. Now what he does is going to matter more. Maybe that motivates him to play better, and I think it will. But that's what I think they want to wait and see if they want to pay him for, because if he can handle those responsibilities, and he certainly has the potential to do that, they'll be fine. But if he and Jack Conklin can't handle those responsibilities anymore, then I don't know. And that's probably why they paid Jack Conklin, because they didn't want to have two young players at edge when they know that those tackle positions are going to be the most important positions when it comes to protecting Deshaun Watson, because of how deep he gets in his drop and because of how he plays the position of quarterback. You cannot change fundamentally how Deshaun Watson plays quarterback. You have to build around it. And my question is, with how you have to build around Deshaun Watson as a quarterback, is the offensive line's talent distribution in the right place? That's an interesting question. Now, again, none of these are reasons that the Browns are going to fail. I don't want to be that pessimistic about it. But these are roadblocks on the road, on the path to victory, that the Browns are going to have to keep an eye on. Every team has these. The Browns have had like 40 on one team before. 4 is a pretty good number of things that you have to worry about. But I think it's an important thing, and it's an important thing that we're aware of and talk about actively is, hey, we got to look out. Hey, is the kicker going to be a problem? Is betting on this upside? Are these guys looking like they're going to hit in camp? Is the new offense and defense, is that causing problems? Is this good? And the offensive line, you know, is the talent in the right place there, or are we going to be in trouble because teams are able to really take advantage of one or two mismatches and really ignore the rest of the very good players in the center? That's my thoughts for today. I thought this conversation was fascinating. I hope it's fascinating to you. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have a great